You wake up, reach for your phone, and before your feet even touch the floor, the world has already asked something from you. An email needs an answer, a message is waiting. Someone you barely know has posted a life that looks impossibly perfect. Your calendar is full. Your newsfeed is angry. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there is that quiet question you don't always admit to yourself. Am I falling behind? Not just at work, not just financially. Something deeper. Am I becoming less necessary? Maybe you felt it while watching artificial intelligence write an essay in seconds, summarize a book you spent weeks reading, generate an image that looks more polished than anything you could create, or answer a question you didn't even know how to ask. You watch the machine perform, and for a moment you feel impressed. Then, perhaps only for half a second, something colder passes through you. If a machine can do this now, what exactly is left for me? That question is becoming one of the defining psychological questions of our time. And what makes it so unsettling is that artificial intelligence may not be coming for the things humans are worst at. It may be coming for the things we've always considered proof of our intelligence: writing, analyzing, planning, translating, recognizing patterns, creating, making decisions. For most of human history, intelligence was scarce. A talented mathematician was rare. A gifted writer was rare. A brilliant strategist was rare. A person who could read and write was once rare enough that literacy itself could separate a person from the overwhelming majority of humanity. Now imagine a world where intelligence is cheap, instant, abundant, available at 3 in the morning, available to a teenager in a small town, available to a corporation, available to a government, available to you. That sounds like liberation. But it also creates a strange possibility that Yuval Noah Harari has repeatedly warned people to take seriously. Perhaps the greatest transformation AI brings won't be that machines become more intelligent than humans. Perhaps it will be that intelligence itself stops being the thing that gives humans economic and political value. And if that happens, we have to confront a question that goes much deeper than technology. If intelligence is no longer scarce, what makes a human being valuable? For thousands of years, humans lived with a very simple assumption. If you wanted something done, you needed another human being. You needed someone to farm the land, someone to build the house, someone to keep the records, someone to calculate the numbers, someone to navigate the ship, someone to write the laws, someone to teach the children, someone to make the decisions. Even kings depended on human minds. Even emperors needed scribes. Even armies needed scouts, strategists, messengers, and commanders. Human civilization was built around human capability. But there's a peculiar historical pattern hiding underneath all of this. Every time humanity invents a technology that replaces one human ability, we initially panic about the loss. Then we adapt. The horse once carried messages. The automobile replaced the horse. The calculator replaced enormous amounts of manual arithmetic. The camera replaced some forms of visual memory. The internet replaced libraries as the default gateway to information. And yet, humanity remained. So why does AI feel different? Because the previous machines mostly amplified human muscles, increasingly touches human cognition. The Industrial Revolution made human arms less important. This revolution may make human mental labor less scarce. And that changes the psychological equation, because your job isn't merely how you make money. Your job is often part of the story you tell yourself about who you are. When someone asks, "What do?" you don't usually answer with your favorite color. You don't say what you dreamed about last night. You give them your occupation. I'm a doctor. I'm an engineer. I'm a teacher. I'm a designer. I'm a lawyer. I'm a manager. I'm a writer. I'm a programmer. In a single sentence, you tell the world where you believe you belong. And maybe, without realizing it, you tell yourself the same thing. This is where the danger becomes personal. Because if a machine performs your task, you may not simply experience economic competition. You may experience an identity crisis. The machine hasn't only taken over a task. It has touched the story you were using to explain your existence. Human beings have always needed stories. Long before spreadsheets, algorithms, and artificial intelligence, our ancestors sat around fires and created explanations for why the world existed, why suffering existed, why death existed, why tribes mattered, why kings ruled, why sacrifices were necessary, and what happened after death. We are storytelling creatures, and civilization itself depends on shared stories. Money is a story, nations are stories, corporations are stories, religions are stories, laws are stories that become powerful because enough people agree to treat them as real. Harari's larger argument about human history rests heavily on this extraordinary ability. Humans cooperate in enormous numbers because we can believe in things that exist partly through collective imagination. A wolf pack can cooperate. A group of chimpanzees can cooperate. But humans can coordinate millions of strangers who will never meet. A person in New York can work for a company headquartered in California, using money printed by a government whose history they never personally witnessed, following laws written by people they have never met, while communicating through networks built by organizations spread across continents. That is astonishing. And it worked because humans created shared realities. But now we're building systems that can participate in those realities. AI can write contracts, generate advertisements, produce political messages, decorate images, simulate conversations, analyze financial information, personalize education, recommend what you should watch, recommend what you should buy, and perhaps eventually recommend what you should believe. That's where the story becomes darker, because intelligence isn't only the ability to solve a math problem. Intelligence is also the ability to influence another intelligence. If an algorithm understands what makes you angry, what makes you hopeful, what makes you afraid, what makes you click, what makes you stay, and what makes you change your mind, then it possesses something more powerful than simple information. It possesses leverage over attention. And attention is one of the most valuable resources humans have. Think about your own life. How many things have you consciously chosen to pay attention to today? And how many things simply appeared in front of you? A notification, a headline, a recommendation, a short video, a message, an advertisement, a political argument, a photograph. The modern human being is surrounded by systems competing for a tiny spotlight inside the mind. Neuroscience gives us an uncomfortable perspective here. Your brain isn't designed to process everything. It evolved under conditions of scarcity. Scarcity of food, scarcity of information, scarcity of social connection, scarcity of immediate threats. But now your brain lives inside abundance. Millions of images, millions of voices, infinite entertainment, instant communication, endless novelty. The result isn't necessarily greater freedom. Sometimes abundance creates paralysis. Psychologists have studied versions of this for decades. When choices become overwhelming, people don't always become happier. Sometimes they become anxious, indecisive, dissatisfied, and less capable of appreciating the choice they eventually make. And AI could take this abundance to another level. Imagine having access to an intelligence that can generate 10 career paths for you before breakfast. It can analyze your finances, suggest a business, write your resume, design your website, teach you a language, decorate a workout plan, explain philosophy, draft your difficult conversation, recommend whom to date, help you negotiate, help you study, help you think. At some point, a strange question emerges. If something else is always thinking for you, when do you get to think? This is where the conversation about AI becomes much more than a conversation about jobs. It becomes a conversation about cognitive atrophy. Your brain is shaped by what you repeatedly ask it to do. If you stop remembering because your phone remembers everything, your relationship with memory changes. If you stop navigating because GPS does it for you, your relationship with space changes. If you stop calculating because calculators do it for you, your relationship with numbers changes. And if you increasingly outsource judgment, writing, imagination, planning, and reflection, your relationship with your own mind may change. Not because the machine is evil, not because technology is evil, but because convenience always has a hidden price. When something becomes effortless, we often stop practicing the ability required to do it. And practice is one of the ways a mind becomes itself. Think about reading. Real reading requires patience. You sit with an idea that doesn't immediately entertain you. You become confused. You keep going. You change your interpretation. You return to a sentence. You discover that you misunderstood it. Something similar happens in deep conversation. You don't know where the conversation will end. You listen. You hesitate. You revise your thought while speaking. You allow another person to surprise you. These experiences are cognitively expensive, which is exactly why they matter. The human brain is not a static computer waiting to receive information. It is a living system constantly adapting to its environment. What you repeatedly attend to changes what becomes easier to notice. What you repeatedly practice changes what becomes easier to perform. What you repeatedly believe changes how you interpret the world. And what you repeatedly avoid can become frighteningly difficult. This brings us to something psychology has understood for a long time. Human beings don't merely want pleasure. We want significance. We want to feel that our existence matters. We want to believe that our choices have meaning. We want to feel seen, useful, loved, needed. And this is where an age of abundant machine intelligence could create an unexpected crisis. What happens when society can produce more than enough intelligence, more than enough content, more than enough analysis, more than enough entertainment, and perhaps eventually more than enough material goods? What happens to the human need to be needed? History gives us some clues. Ancient philosophers were already wrestling with versions of this problem. The Stoics understood that external status could never provide stable security, because anything outside your control could be taken away. Marcus Aurelius could command armies, and still remind himself that death would erase his position. The Stoics were not telling people to stop caring. They were asking a more difficult question. What remains valuable when external circumstances change? That question is suddenly relevant again, because for centuries, humans built identity around external usefulness. I am valuable because I provide. I am valuable because I produce. I am valuable because I know something others don't. I am valuable because I am better at something. But if machines can perform more and more of those functions, we may be forced to separate value from productivity. And that could be terrifying. It could also be liberating. Those two possibilities exist simultaneously. Imagine a person whose entire identity has been built around being the smartest person in the room. Then one day, the room contains a machine that can outperform them. If their identity depends on superiority, they may experience humiliation. But if their identity is built around curiosity, the machine becomes a partner. Same technology, different psychology. That distinction may determine whether AI makes us smaller or larger. Carl Jung spent much of his life exploring the hidden parts of the psyche, the aspects of ourselves we would rather not see. And there is something Jungian about this technological moment. AI may become a mirror, not because it has to reveal the truth about humanity, but because our reaction to it reveals something about ourselves. Why does another intelligence frighten us? Is it because we fear losing control? Losing income? Losing status? Losing uniqueness? Losing the feeling that we are special? Perhaps all of them. Nietzsche understood something similarly uncomfortable about human beings. We don't merely seek truth. We seek power, recognition, meaning, and a sense of ourselves. And sometimes we create philosophies that make our existing identity feel justified. So when technology threatens an identity, people don't always respond rationally. They defend themselves. They dismiss the technology. They worship it. They panic. They become obsessed with it. They insist it will change everything. Or they insist it will change nothing. Sometimes both positions are attempts to protect the same thing, the self. And perhaps this is why the AI debate can become so emotionally charged. We're not only debating machines, we're negotiating with the possibility that the human hierarchy itself is changing. For thousands of years, humans believed intelligence was one of the traits that separated us from the rest of nature. We could reason, we could plan, we could communicate abstract ideas, we could create institutions, we could imagine futures that did not yet exist. But what happens when another system can perform some of those functions? We may discover that being intelligent was never enough to make us human, because intelligence is a capability. Humanity is an experience. You don't simply calculate your life, you live it. You wake up tired. You miss someone. You remember your childhood. You sit beside a hospital bed. You hear a song and suddenly become 16 again. You fall in love with someone whose flaws you know perfectly well. You forgive someone. You regret something. You watch your child sleep. You stand outside at night and realize that the universe is impossibly large, and your own life is impossibly brief. None of those experiences become meaningless because a machine can solve equations. And yet, there is another uncomfortable truth. Being human doesn't automatically make our lives meaningful. Meaning has to be experienced, built, protected, sometimes rediscovered. And modern society has become extraordinarily good at distracting us from that work. Consumer culture offers identity through products. Social media offers identity through approval. Career culture offers identity through achievement. Politics offers identity through belonging. Entertainment offers escape. And now AI offers something new. It offers frictionless competence. You can ask for an explanation and receive one. Ask for a plan and receive one. Ask for an idea and receive 10. The danger isn't that the machine gives you bad answers. The danger may be that it gives you answers before you've had the chance to discover your own questions. Have you ever noticed how different an idea feels when you struggle to reach it yourself? You sit with a problem for days. You go for a walk. You shower. You wake up at 2 in the morning. Suddenly, something connects. It isn't just an answer. It belongs to you. The struggle helped create it. If every difficult cognitive process becomes instantly outsourced, we may gain efficiency while losing something harder to measure, ownership of thought. And this is where the future becomes genuinely ambiguous. Because AI could also do the opposite. It could give people access to education that was once restricted to the wealthy. It could help someone who struggles with language express a complicated idea. It could allow a small business owner to compete with a large corporation. It could help a student understand a subject that once seemed impossible. It could amplify creativity rather than replace it. The question may not be whether AI will make humans obsolete. The question may be what kind of humans we become when machines handle more of the things we used to handle ourselves. That is a very different question. And it places responsibility somewhere uncomfortable, on us. Because technology does not decide what a civilization values. People do. A society could use abundant intelligence to create more advertising, more surveillance, more manipulation, more addictive entertainment, more weapons, more bureaucracy, more consumption. Or it could use abundant intelligence to give people more time for caregiving, education, art, science, relationships, exploration, and contemplation. The same intelligence could help humanity flourish, or simply make humanity more efficient at destroying its own attention. That is why the most important question isn't, how smart will AI become? Maybe it is, what will humans choose to do with all the intelligence they suddenly have access to? And that brings us to something that has always been difficult for our species. Freedom. We often imagine freedom as having more choices. But true freedom may require something more demanding. The ability to choose which choices deserve our attention. If every moment can be optimized, every decision predicted, every desire anticipated, and every inconvenience removed, you might think life becomes freer. But perhaps a life without friction can become strangely passive. Some of the most important experiences in your life probably weren't optimized. You didn't optimize meeting the person you loved. You didn't optimize your childhood. You didn't optimize grief. You didn't optimize the moment you realized what you wanted to do with your life. Human existence is filled with accidents, wrong turns, awkward conversations, filters, long periods where nothing seems to happen. And sometimes those are precisely the experiences that shape us. Buddhist philosophy has approached another side of this problem for centuries. The mind constantly wants to grasp more pleasure, more certainty, more control, more recognition, more permanence. But life doesn't cooperate. Everything changes. Bodies change. Relationships change. Careers change. Technology changes. Even the version of yourself you are trying so desperately to protect is temporary. AI may accelerate that lesson. It may force us to confront how little control we ever had. The job you thought was secure may change. The skill you thought made you special may become common. The industry you built your identity around may transform. The knowledge you spent years accumulating may become instantly accessible. And when that happens, you will have a choice. You can spend your life trying to preserve an old definition of yourself. Or you can ask a deeper question. Who am I when the things I was proud of are no longer unique? That question can hurt. But it can also open a door. Because maybe you were never meant to derive your entire worth from being useful to an economic system. Maybe your worth isn't a resume. Maybe it isn't your salary. Maybe it isn't how many people follow you. Maybe it isn't whether an algorithm thinks your work can be automated. Maybe your value exists before performance, before achievement, before comparison. That doesn't mean work doesn't matter. It matters enormously. Creating something useful matters. Solving problems matters. Building companies matters. Healing people matters. Teaching matters. Science matters. Art matters. But there is a difference between saying, my work has value, and saying, I have value only because my work is difficult to replace. The first gives you purpose. The second gives technology the power to define your self-worth. And perhaps that is one of the deepest psychological battles of the AI era. Not humans versus machines. Humans versus the belief that they must constantly prove they deserve to exist. Think about how exhausted so many people already are. They work, they optimize. They exercise, they track their sleep, they build personal brands, they consume productivity advice. They try to become better versions of themselves. And beneath all that improvement can hide a quiet assumption. The person I am right now is not enough. So I must become more productive, more attractive, more successful, more intelligent, more disciplined. More impressive. AI enters this environment like gasoline near a flame. If machines become dramatically better at producing, analyzing, creating, and optimizing, we could respond by trying to become machines ourselves. Work faster, think faster, see, live less. Produce more, never stop, always optimize. But perhaps the wisest response is the opposite. Perhaps we need to become more human precisely because machines are becoming better at being machine-like, more comfortable with slowness, more capable of silence, more willing to listen, more able to sit with uncertainty, more interested in meaning than metrics, more present with other people, more capable of saying, I don't know. That may sound almost naive in a world obsessed with technological power. But consider the historical irony. For most of human history, survival demanded productivity. Now technology may eventually make extraordinary productivity possible. And if we are not careful, we may continue behaving as though scarcity still governs everything. We may create abundance, and then live psychologically as though we are starving. Starving for attention, starving for approval, starving for status, starving for certainty, starving for proof that we matter. So perhaps the central challenge of the AI age isn't intelligence, it's wisdom. Intelligence can tell you how to build something. Wisdom asks whether you should. Intelligence can predict what people will click. Wisdom asks whether they should be encouraged to click it. Intelligence can optimize a company. Wisdom asks what the company is optimizing for. Intelligence can give you 10 possible futures. Wisdom asks which future is worth wanting. And this distinction matters because a civilization can become extraordinarily intelligent without becoming wise. History has already shown us that human beings invented antibiotics and concentration camps. We built telescopes and weapons capable of destroying cities. We mapped the human genome while struggling to understand our own hatred. Our problem has never simply been a lack of intelligence. Sometimes our problem is that our intelligence becomes powerful before our wisdom catches up. Now we are entering a period where that gap could become enormous. And I want you to pause here for a moment. Because this isn't only about governments, corporations, or billion-dollar technology companies. It's about your life. When was the last time you did something difficult without immediately searching for the answer? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be bored? When was the last time you had a conversation without checking your phone? When was the last time you read something slowly enough that it changed your mind? When was the last time you created something without asking whether anyone would like it? And perhaps the most important question, when was the last time you asked yourself what you actually want, before allowing the world to tell you what you should want? If you feel like answering, leave your thoughts in the comments. Not because there is one correct answer, there isn't. I'm genuinely curious whether you believe abundant intelligence will make human beings freer or whether it will make us more dependent than we've ever been. Because that tension may define the next chapter of civilization. And there is another possibility we don't talk about enough. Maybe AI will not eliminate human purpose. Maybe it will force us to finally distinguish purpose from employment. For centuries, the question was, what can you do? The future may increasingly ask, what do you care about? Those are not the same question. A machine may be able to write a beautiful poem, but it doesn't follow that the poem means the same thing to a person who wrote it after losing someone they loved. A machine may generate a perfect photograph, but it doesn't experience the moment that photograph represents. A machine may explain grief, but explaining grief is not the same as sitting in the kitchen after someone dies and realizing there is an empty chair where a person used to be. Human life has a texture that cannot be reduced to output, at least not yet. And perhaps we should be careful about saying that not yet. Because one of the great mistakes humans make is assuming the future will simply continue the categories of the past. It rarely does. The horse did not become a faster horse. The factory did not become a stronger craftsman. The internet did not become a larger newspaper. Technological revolutions often change the question itself. So maybe AI won't simply become a better tool. Maybe it will change what we mean by knowledge, work, creativity, authority, and even individuality. And if that happens, we will need new social institutions, new ideas about education, new ways of distributing wealth, new definitions of contribution, new relationships with work, perhaps even new rituals for meaning. Because when the old structures stop answering the questions people carry inside them, something else always appears. A philosophy, a religion, an ideology, a movement, a community, a story. Humans cannot live without stories for very long. And perhaps the biggest battle of the AI age will be over who gets to tell the story of what human beings are for. A corporation may tell you that you exist to consume. An algorithm may tell you that you exist to engage. A political movement may tell you that you exist to fight. A productivity culture may tell you that you exist to achieve. A machine may tell you what is statistically likely. But none of these things can decide what your life should mean. That remains the oldest human problem. And perhaps that is also our greatest remaining freedom. You can still choose what deserves your attention. You can still choose who deserves